After Israeli bombs damaged 149 Gaza schools in 11 days last May, the Los Angeles Teachers Union was set to vote on officially endorsing BDS. However, the vote was killed before it could take place after 5 Israel-aligned lobby groups carried out a concerted pressure campaign over several months. According to new reporting from Isaac Sher and Jewish Currents, the ProIsrael Lobby worked to kill the vote from both within the union and outside it, activating anti-BDS members and even rallying a campaign of concerned parents to send letters and write emails.
According to Sher, UTLA is one of the first unions in the country to consider a BDS endorsement this seriously. According to labor historian Nelson Lichtenstein, labor unions are moving left and Israel has linked itself to the American right. Ultimately, he predicted, quote, the labor movement will be against this within years, not decades. Right, it does seem like it's headed in this direction. But the hawkish Israel lobby, pro-Israel lobby, is certainly not going down without a fight, even in these minor kind of contests over resolutions.
Yeah, although I guess I would be a little. There's something that makes me a little uncomfortable about a teachers union why do they need to take a stance on this? I guess teachers unions say that teachers need to be unionized, so they can collectively work together to, protect their educational interests, your educational families, students, etc. When they're taking stances on divisive, and I would probably lean in the direction of agreeing with them, with BDS, etc. But they're taking a stance on a divisive foreign policy question that isn't even internal to the U.S. and has nothing to do with U.S. education. It seems, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That seems potentially alienating and unnecessary.
Right, and so the pro-Israel advocates will use that, and they will say that, look, because you're singling out Israel, that is ipso facto anti-Semitism. Like, what is it in particular about this conflict that has your attention, other than hostility? Mm-hmm. The counter argument is, no, this is a Palestinian-led movement, the BDS movement. Israel claims to be the only democracy in the Middle East, and because of its central place in foreign policy, particularly as a major ally of the United States, that elevates it. That the hypocrisy between the claimed democratic status and the apartheid-like conditions that so many Palestinians live under elevates it to a place of a South Africa, and so you see this energy on the left and pushing every institution that you can think of to become part of this global movement in very much the same way that South Africa was approached in the 1980s. And that's where I think the historians point that labor unions are becoming, at a lot of local levels, are becoming more left-wing. And they're becoming more involved in these global movements. But I'm sure there are members who say, is this really something that
right.
we need
I'm
to be
paying dues to this union, so it can fight for me to have higher wages,
more remote learning,
more remote learning to keep me out of a classroom forever, not to support this agenda. Well, but actually, there are some teachers. There are plenty of teachers who don't like remote learning. They know it's bad for their kids, and they don't like doing it. And they wanted to get back to the classroom, and they were
right. This
they were a
teachers
minority.
unions apart.
Yeah.
Right. There were a lot who argued on the other side of this.
Absolutely.
That it was killed, and difficult to difficult to keep 26, 27, 12-year-olds engaged over Zoom.
Absolutely.
So.
I've talked to, there are teachers who are Republicans, who are conservatives, and they don't agree with some of the political activities of the union. That's one of the major reasons they don't want to pay dues to it. They don't want to be involved in it because because it's, it's an arm of the Democratic Party. It's promoting liberal and left-wing causes. So right. At least if they're relating to education, I can see the point of it. But this is a.
But the fact that these pro-Israel groups felt the need to weigh in on this question, I think shows that these tactics are effective. Like they're absolutely getting the attention.
And there's no doubt that the pro-Israel
government.
lobby is very powerful and very influential, and I'm not like on their side on this issue. It's just it's kind of weird to me for the teachers to take a stance. Debates over Israeli occupation of Gaza and the West Bank intensified this week after the Washington Post reported that the Israeli military has initiated a broad facial recognition surveillance program in occupied territories. Rolled out over the past 2 years, the program uses Blue Wolf smartphone technology to capture images of Palestinians' faces, matching them to a database of images so extensive it was nicknamed Facebook for Palestinians. The phone app flashes in different colors to alert soldiers if a person is to be detained, arrested, or left alone. According to the Post, soldiers competed last year to build the Blue Wolf database by photographing Palestinians, including children, by the thousands. Units who collected the most pictures for the database were allegedly given prizes. Very bad. It's not good.
And from a libertarian,
yes, absolutely.
So the West Bank and Gaza, well, Gaza in a separate way, because Gaza is kind of a surrounded open-air prison, but does not have Israeli checkpoints like inside of it. But the West Bank is a complete libertarian dystopia. I mean, in order to get, you can live 4 blocks from the beach in the West Bank and never be able to go there.
Right.
To go more than a block or two, is going to require some sort of papers if you're Palestinian. But even if you are a Palestinian citizen of Israel, you face different access to the courts, different access to owning property, different ability to move about the country than if you're a Jewish citizen of Israel. And if you're not an Israeli citizen, forget it. Forget about it. And so that is a legal structure that exists, and they're laying on top of that this facial recognition technology, which is then going, as they say, they're going to say, signal that person out, arrest that person.
Yeah, the government should not just compile databases of people's faces, people's identifying information, just in case. That's part of the, well, you have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide sort of mentality that is authoritarian and wrong and cruel and leads to all sorts of abuses.
Right, and even that falls apart because the nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide only works if laws apply equally to all citizens, right. And laws
you have nothing to fear. You have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide.
you have something to fear.
Yeah.
By virtue of being Palestinian.
Right.
By virtue of your birth.
So. It's interesting they're calling it a Facebook for Palestinians. Facebook, I was just reading, has shut down or is deciding to shut down, right? Their facial recognition software program, which is probably for the best.
Yes, I would think so.
Yeah, we don't want governments. Certainly, we don't want governments gathering this kind of information.
Right, and it seems like Israel is just trying to slow walk this BDS movement as long as it can to get to a place where it just locks in this kind of dystopian authoritarian control over these occupied territories, and then just presents it to the world as a fait accompli, and continues to talk about some type of resolution, but having so fundamentally changed the material reality on the ground that it becomes impossible.
But only democracy in the Middle East.
Right, and I think they're also hoping that we move into kind of a post-democracy era, where democracy is no longer kind of
considered the platonic ideal.
Yeah, the virtue that we have thought of it over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And they might make it. Anyway, we will have more Rising for you right after this.